I was born at my grandmother and grandpa's home, and that was on West 33rd South, 3rd West and 33rd South. After there, my mother and dad bought their own home, and that was at 148 Commonwealth Avenue. So that's where I grew up mostly. We just, they couldn't afford a home yet, but they saved up and got enough money and then bought their own home, which was a very small home, but it was nice for us. I have 2 sisters and 1 brother, Janelle and Elaine, and then my brother was Eldon. The funnest thing for me was my father run the pictures at, they used to have pictures on a reel on a screen, and my dad used to always do that. He was a scoutmaster also, and mother was a stay-at-home mom. But we had wonderful times there. I remember an old Tin Lizzie car that we had. You probably don't even know what that is. Yeah, it's like it's almost like a convertible, and it has canvas top and everything, and little celluloid windows. And I remember when we was at one of the ward shows that someone stole that car. That was our only transportation. Dad worked at Deseret News, and he used to walk from our home, which was about 21st South, downtown to the Deseret News. He used to walk that all the time. Wow. Well, it was Madison School at first when we lived on Commonwealth Avenue. And then my grandmother wasn't very well, and so Grandma and Grandpa said that they would buy us a home if they could live with us for the rest of their lives. So then we moved at 365 East 17th South, and that's where most of my growing up I remember. Oh, we were at a fireside one night, and I was going with a different fellow that was more interested in talking to my grandfather than he was me. So Walt says, "Do you mind if I take her out?" And he said, "No." And so then I started going with Walt. He was already out of high school by a year, and I was just graduating, and that's when I met him. I was 19 when I got married. Okay. Yeah, so we was married in 1942. Oh, he went to the Pacific. Oh, okay. Japanese. Okay. That's when the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. We were married when he went. The couple that we went around with all the time, he went in the service too, but they had a little boy, and I can remember kind of playing and tending and everything, the little boy that Marjorie had. Very cool. So we taught mutual together. I don't know if you know what mutual is, but We taught mutual together when they were gone. We got home after the war was over. We lived on Ramona Avenue, which was in Lincoln Ward, and that's where Marge and I taught the mutual girls and everything. So when he came back, we were living there on Ramona Avenue. We just thought it was never going to happen, and it did. David is the oldest, and he was born July 22nd, 1945. Then Diane was July 24th, 47. So they were, and then Dick was, I think his about 3 years later. And then Tom was quite a bit later. Ron was after Dick. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When your kids were younger?
Yes. After he came back from the service, before we even had children, we went down to Grand Canyon and with some friends of ours and everything. And then after the children were born, I think mostly down to Zion's and down the southern parts mostly. He always, even in the service, he was always proficient on the typewriter and things like that. He was a teletype operator when he was in the service. So when he was here, he was still kind of in an office. And he worked at 8 Incorporated, so he was mostly in the office. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, he joined the Highway Patrol. Mm-hmm. He didn't race him. He was the pit steward. The one that stood up on the big platform and marked down the races of who won and all that kind of stuff. He was a pit steward. David raced a little bit. Dig. Yeah, they raced a little bit. But I was a scorer, and I had to sit up in the booth and keep score and everything. So,
very cool.
Yeah, I remember Dick being so mad because we had dropped him off and he wanted to go. But I worked at Fort Douglas at the 9th Service Command. And that was the biggest war effort I did. My sister and I both worked up there. But we got paid. It wasn't a free thing. I just remember they used to call Dick the mean little kid.
Yeah.
But he was very independent, and he never liked to have people tell him what to do. He would do what he wanted to do, and that's why they called him the mean little kid, because he was so independent.
Yeah.
He had a 3-wheel tricycle that he used to go up and down the street with a little bell on it, dinging the bell to make the people get out of the way. Yeah, and Diane was always the more quiet one. David, he was a little mischievous one.
Yeah.
He got in a lot of trouble. No, Ron wasn't one to get in a lot of trouble. But he had rheumatic fever when he was a young boy, and I think I babied him much because of that. He was in the hospital for 6 weeks, and I used to kind of sit with him and everything, and so they all said he was a favorite, but he wasn't. It was just that he required more attention. Of course, with Rotary, I traveled around and everything, but he wouldn't go on those trips. When Dad was at Pearl Harbor, um, he was supposed to be on a plane. You probably heard this. He was supposed to be on this plane, and his replacement hadn't come, so he had to stay. And when the plane took off, it exploded in air. Mm-hmm. So he would never fly again. Came back by ship, and that's why he wouldn't go on the excursions with me, as he wouldn't fly. Well, he had the sharpshooter. He had, I can't think of any others than that.
Okay.
I know the reason he didn't make more than corporal is because he wasn't given a furlough when I came down there to visit him at San Diego, and he took off anyway. And yeah. So he came and see me, so he stayed corporal.
Yeah.